The moment Whitney Houston's trembling hand touched Dolly Parton's shoulder backstage at the 1992 Grammy Awards, nobody knew this conversation would change how both women saw themselves forever. If you love stories about humility, grace, and what happens when two legends meet in a moment of pure vulnerability, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button. Drop a comment telling us about a time someone's generosity changed your life. It was February 25th, 1992, and the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles was electric with the biggest night in music. Whitney Houston had just delivered what many consider the most powerful vocal performance in Grammy history, singing "I Will Always Love You" with a force that made the entire audience rise to their feet before she even finished. Down in the fourth row, Dolly Parton sat frozen in her seat, her hands gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles turned white. As Whitney's voice soared through that final impossible note, Dolly felt something she'd never experienced before, a mixture of overwhelming pride and unexpected grief. Pride that her simple song had become this magnificent, and grief that she'd never be able to sing it this way herself. She smiled for the cameras, applauded with everyone else, but inside something was shifting. Her song had outgrown her. But what nobody in that audience knew was that Whitney was terrified. Not of the performance, not of the crowd. Whitney Houston was terrified of the woman sitting in the fourth row, watching every note, every breath, every choice Whitney made with that song. Dolly Parton. Because "I Will Always Love You" wasn't Whitney's song, it was Dolly's. She'd written it 18 years earlier in 1974, a simple country ballad about saying goodbye to her business partner Porter Wagoner. It was personal, it was hers. And now this young powerhouse from Newark had just turned it into the biggest selling single of all time. The Bodyguard soundtrack featuring Whitney's version had sold over 12 million copies in just 3 months. Everywhere you went, you heard Whitney's voice soaring through those high notes that Dolly had written, but never imagined could sound like that. Radio stations played it every hour. MTV put it on repeat. The world had fallen in love with Whitney's version. But here's what was eating Whitney alive as she walked off that Grammy stage. She hadn't asked Dolly's permission before recording it. Kevin Costner and the movie producers had chosen the song. Clive Davis had approved it. Whitney had sung it. But nobody had thought to ask the woman who wrote it how she felt about someone else making it their own. Whitney's mother, Cissy Houston, noticed her daughter's hands shaking as they stood in the wings. "Baby, what's wrong? You just gave the performance of a lifetime." "Mama," Whitney whispered, her eyes scanning the backstage area. "Is Dolly Parton still here? I need to find her. I need to talk to her." Cissy understood immediately. Her daughter, despite being the biggest star in the world at that moment, was still the humble girl from New Hope Baptist Church who believed in respect and gratitude. "Let's go find her, baby." What happened next became one of the most beautiful moments in music history, but it stayed private for years. Only a handful of people witnessed it, and those who did never forgot it. Whitney found Dolly in the hallway leading to the dressing rooms. The country legend was surrounded by well-wishers, her signature blonde hair piled high, her smile genuine as she hugged everyone who approached. When she saw Whitney walking toward her, something shifted in Dolly's expression. The crowd parted. Whitney Houston, the woman who had just brought an entire arena to tears, looked like a nervous child as she approached Dolly Parton. Her voice, so powerful just minutes ago, came out soft and uncertain. "Miss Parton, I'm Whitney Houston. I need to talk to you about your song." Dolly's smile didn't waver, but everyone who knew her could see something complicated happening behind her eyes. "Oh, honey, I know exactly who you are. The whole world knows who you are now." There was no malice in Dolly's tone, but there was something else. Something Whitney picked up on immediately. "Miss Parton, Whitney's voice cracked slightly. "I need to apologize to you. I need to know if I did your song justice, if I honored what you created, because that song is yours and I feel like I took something that wasn't mine to take." The hallway had gone quiet. People were pretending not to listen, but everyone was listening. Dolly Parton looked at this beautiful young woman, this vocal powerhouse who had just transformed a simple country song into a global phenomenon. And something happened that Dolly hadn't expected. She felt her eyes start to burn with tears. "Darling," Dolly said, her voice tight with emotion, "let's go somewhere private. This isn't a conversation for a hallway." The two women, trailed by Sissy Houston and Dolly's manager, found an empty dressing room. When the door closed, leaving just the four of them, Dolly turned to Whitney and said something that nobody expected. "I need to be honest with you, honey. When I first heard your version of my song on the radio, I pulled my car over and I cried." Whitney's face fell. "Oh no, Miss Parton, I'm so sorry. I should have—" "Let me finish, baby." Dolly's hand went up gently. "I cried because I heard what my song could be, what it was always meant to be, what I could never make it into because my voice isn't yours." The room went completely silent. "I wrote that song in my dressing room after telling Porter Wagoner I was leaving his show," Dolly continued, her accent thick with emotion. "It took me about 20 minutes to write. It was simple. It was honest. It was mine. I recorded it. It did okay. It was a country hit. People liked it." Dolly paused, looking directly at Whitney. "But what you did with my song, Whitney Houston, you gave it a life I never could have given it. You took my little country ballad and you turned it into something that's going to live forever." Whitney was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "When I heard you hit that final note," Dolly continued, "the one where you go up and up and up, I realized something that was hard for me to accept. My song was always bigger than me. It was waiting for you. It needed your voice to become what it was meant to be." "Miss Parton, that's not true," Whitney protested. "Your version is beautiful. It's perfect the way you wrote it." "It's good," Dolly corrected gently. "But honey, good isn't great. What you did is great. And you know what the hardest part was for me?" Whitney waited. "Admitting that someone could take something I created and make it better than I ever could. That's a hard pill to swallow when you're a songwriter. When you're someone who's built a career on being the definitive version of your own songs. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody expected." "But you know what happened after I stopped crying in my car that day?" Dolly asked, a smile starting to form on her face. "I started laughing because I realized something wonderful. My song was going to make me more money than I ever dreamed possible." The tension in the room broke. Everyone laughed. "I'm serious," Dolly continued, her trademark humor shining through. "Every time they play your version on the radio, I get paid. Every time someone buys that soundtrack, I get paid. Every time some young girl sings it at a wedding, trying to hit those notes you hit, I get royalties. You made me a very rich woman, Whitney Houston, and I didn't even have to open my mouth." Whitney was laughing and crying at the same time now. "But here's what I really want to tell you," Dolly said, her voice getting serious again. "And I need you to hear this, really hear it. What you're feeling right now, this guilt, this worry about taking something that was mine, I need you to let that go." Dolly took both of Whitney's hands in hers. "Artists are supposed to reinterpret songs. That's how music lives and grows. If I had been precious about that song, if I had said, no, nobody else can record it, the world would have missed out on something extraordinary. Your version of I Will Always Love You is going to touch millions of people in ways my version never could." "But it's still your song," Whitney said softly. "No, honey," Dolly replied. "It was my song. Now it's our song. It's your song too. You earned it with every note you sang. You made it yours while still honoring what I created. That's a gift, Whitney. That's not theft." What Dolly said next is what made Whitney Houston break down completely. "In fact, I want to ask you something, and I'm being completely serious. Would you teach me how to sing it your way?" Whitney's head shot up. "What?" "I'm serious," Dolly said. "I want to learn how you approach that song. I want to understand how you built those moments. Because watching you sing it tonight, I realized I could learn something from how you interpreted my own song." Sissy Houston, who had been silent this whole time, spoke up. "Dolly, you don't need to—" "Oh, I want to," Dolly interrupted. "I'm not too proud to learn from someone who understood my song in ways I never did. That's not weakness. That's wisdom." For the next 45 minutes in that dressing room at the Shrine Auditorium, something magical happened. Whitney Houston and Dolly Parton sat together, singing I Will Always Love You in different ways, sharing techniques, discussing choices, talking about the emotion behind each phrase. Dolly showed Whitney the simple, honest approach she'd taken, the country restraint, the gentle goodbye in her version. Whitney showed Dolly the gospel runs, the build-up, the power that transformed the song into an anthem. And somewhere in that room, watching these two women share this song like a sacred gift between them, everyone present realized they were witnessing something rare. Two artists from completely different worlds, different generations, different genres, finding common ground in mutual respect and genuine humility. You know what I love most about your version? Dolly asked as they finished running through the song together. You kept the heart of it. With all that power, with all those incredible notes, you never forgot that it's a song about love and letting go. A lot of singers would have just made it about showing off, but you made it about the emotion. That's why it works. I learned that from my mama, Whitney said, glancing at Sissy. She always told me that technique without heart is just noise. Dolly nodded. Your mama's a wise woman. As the evening wound down and people started heading to after parties, Dolly pulled Whitney aside one more time. I want you to promise me something, Dolly said. Anything, Whitney replied. Don't you ever apologize for your gift again. Don't you ever feel like you took something that wasn't yours? You honored my song. You elevated it. You gave it a life beyond what I could have imagined. That's not stealing, honey. That's artistry. Dolly paused, making sure Whitney was really listening. And when someone comes along someday and takes one of your songs and makes it their own, I want you to remember this conversation. I want you to be as gracious and as excited as I am right now, because that's how music survives. That's how songs become immortal. We pass them on. We share them. We let other people make them their own. Whitney hugged Dolly tight, both women crying again. Thank you, Whitney whispered. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that. Oh, I think I do, Dolly replied, pulling back to look at Whitney's face. Because I needed to say it. I needed to mean it. You helped me understand something about my own music tonight, Whitney Houston. You helped me see that the greatest thing a songwriter can hope for is that their song outlives them, that it takes on a life of its own, and you gave my song wings. That conversation in 1992 changed both women profoundly. For Whitney, it gave her permission to fully own her interpretation of the song. Before that night, she'd performed it with a lingering guilt. After talking with Dolly, she performed it with complete confidence. It became truly her signature song. For Dolly, it shifted how she saw her role as a songwriter. She became more generous about letting other artists record her songs. She actively encouraged reinterpretation. She understood that songs aren't static creations, but living things that grow and change with each artist who touches them. Years later in interviews, Dolly would say, "The biggest check I ever got was for Whitney's version of I Will Always Love You. But the biggest gift was watching what she did with it and learning to love my own song in a whole new way." When Whitney Houston died in 2012, Dolly Parton was devastated. At Whitney's funeral, Dolly stood and shared the story of that night backstage at the Grammys. She told the mourners about Whitney's humility, her respect, her genuine concern about honoring the song. Whitney Houston didn't just have the voice of an angel, Dolly said through tears. She had the heart of one too. She taught me that greatness and humility can exist in the same person. She taught me that being generous with your art doesn't diminish you, it expands you. Dolly finished her eulogy by saying something that made everyone in that church weep. When I get to heaven, if I'm lucky enough to get there, I hope I hear Whitney singing my song, because that's when I'll know I'm really home. Today, I Will Always Love You exists in two definitive versions. Dolly's original country ballad, simple and heartfelt, a perfect expression of gentle goodbye, and Whitney's powerhouse interpretation, soaring and emotional, a transformative vocal performance that defined a generation. Both versions are perfect. Both versions are necessary, and both women understood that the song was bigger than either of them. The lesson of that backstage conversation in 1992 wasn't just about a song. It was about ego, artistry, generosity, and grace. It was about understanding that when we create something and release it into the world, we no longer fully own it. It belongs to everyone who connects with it. Dolly Parton could have been bitter. She could have resented Whitney's version overshadowing hers. She could have held tight to her song and refused to celebrate what Whitney had done with it. Instead, she chose generosity. She chose celebration. She chose to see Whitney's success as expanding the song's legacy, not diminishing her own. And Whitney, who could have just taken the song and run with it, chose humility. She chose respect. She chose to seek out the woman who created it and make sure she had honored the original intent. That's why this story matters. Because in an industry built on ego and competition, two women chose a different path. They chose grace. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that greatness and humility can coexist, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment about a time you had to let go of something you created and watch it become something bigger. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the moments that changed music history forever. Because sometimes the most beautiful moments in music aren't the performances. They're the conversations that happen backstage when two artists meet in vulnerability and remind each other what really matters. Dolly Parton and Whitney Houston. Two voices, two interpretations. One song that belonged to both of them, and a lesson that will outlive them both. Share your art generously, honor those who came before you, and understand that making something your own doesn't mean taking it away from someone else. That's the legacy of that Grammy night in 1992. That's what happened when Dolly said, "That's my song, honey," and Whitney's response made them both understand that great art doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to everyone who has the courage to make it their own while honoring where it came from.